It is well known that the trial of Lucy Letby set the record for the longest trial ever in the UK. It could well turn out that the trial sets another record. The record for the most instances of perjury in a single trial.
To be honest.
It was reported on the front page of the Sunday Times on May 11th that Sir David Davis had written to Cheshire Constabulary and made a formal perjury complaint against Ravi Jayaram. The grounds for an investigation into Dr. Jayaram are multifaceted, and there are multiple inconsistencies and contradictions that could be put to a jury for them to decide if these contradictions could credibly be deemed as incorrect memory recall or as intentional lies. That said, Ravi Jayaram is not the only one coming under the microscope, and there is credible suspicion against the doctors from the hospital, both those publicly known and some who are anonymised, along with suspicion of some of the expert witnesses. To my knowledge, the legal ball is rolling with several of these perjury complaints. Cheshire Constabulary have so far declined to investigate anyone for perjury if it undermines the jury decision. However, more recently, they have been notified by medical experts who have seen evidence in the case that they will be referred to the Independent Office for Police Conduct if they do not investigate some of the doctors who testified at the trial. So I'm going to start with Dr. Evans, who is probably the most controversial figure from the trial. Some take the view that almost everything he said at the trial was a lie, or maybe he was just incompetent. Reading through a signed statement with which he provided the court, which relates to the case of baby N, quote, inserting any kind of implement, such as a nasogastric tube, into the baby's mouth and thrusting it into the back of the throat will be sufficient to traumatize the soft tissues of the oropharynx, causing bleeding and subsequent generalized deterioration, close quote. So he described to the court that a nasogastric tube could be used as a potentially dangerous weapon. Now contrast this with what he told John Sweeney's podcast about nasogastric tubes.
This nasogastric tube had a plastic so soft it would not have perforated the skin on the rice pudding.
He says that in response to the fact that Lucy Letby was discovered next to a baby with blood around his mouth, with the insinuation that Lucy Letby must have caused the bleeding. Dr. Evans claims that he only took this view of nasogastric tubes once he knew more about the ones used at the Countess of Chester.
I only got hold of the type of nasogastrics they used much later.
If this justification were given in isolation, then you could perhaps give Dr. Evans the benefit of the doubt. However, on closer examination of his evidence and public statements, it seems to be part of a wider pattern where every time new evidence presents itself, it makes Lucy Letby look guilty. If there is any new evidence which would be exculpatory to Lucy Letby, such as Dr. Shu Lee's new research on venous air embolism, he immediately discredits it.
I think that the collective opinions of the panel is about as weak a group of opinions that I've ever seen.
A case that makes Dr. Evans look very shady is the case of baby C. Not necessarily his most outrageous statement, as he may have been lying to the media rather than the jury, but talking in general terms about the babies on the Lucy Letby indictment. This is a statement Dr. Evans made to the 60 Minutes Australia documentary.
These were babies who were under control. In other words, they were not requiring huge amounts of oxygen. They were not requiring breathing support.
So now to look at this exchange involving Dr. Evans and the prosecutor from day 20 of the trial. The prosecutor puts it to Dr. Evans, quote, yes, can you give us in a list the relevant risks? So not every conceivable risk, Dr. Evans, but so far as his presentation was concerned, close quote. Dr. Evans responds, right, the commonest risk is to do with breathing, with his respiratory system, and lots of premature babies require support with breathing, so therefore there was a breathing problem. Doing a double take, quote, lots of premature babies require support with breathing, so therefore there was a breathing problem, close quote. Now contrast this with his statement to 60 Minutes Australia.
They were not requiring breathing support.
Referring still to day 20 from the trial, Dr. Evans would describe two forms of breathing support used by the baby: continuous positive airway pressure ventilation and Optiflow. Reading through it, quote, The amount of respiratory support that he required continued to decrease. So we've heard about he was on CPAP, and then in the last 12 hours of his life he did not require CPAP. He required a system called Optiflow, which is basically nasal prongs to facilitate giving oxygen to babies. If you're inclined to give Dr. Evans the benefit of the doubt, then you might think he was talking about some of the more suspicious collapses. I think it would be wise to be wary of Dr. Evans. Focusing once again on Dr. Evans' testimony from day 20, I would like to read through this segment, which refers to another signed statement with which Dr. Evans provided the court. Quote, "I am suspicious of the gaseous distension reported on the abdominal X-ray on 12th of June and wonder whether this represents inappropriate management whereby his attendant inserted excess air into his stomach via his nasogastric tube, doing so in the knowledge that it would cause the infant discomfort and distress." Close quote. So the key points there are that on the 12th of June, Dr. Evans is suggesting someone has inserted excess air into the stomach via nasogastric tube. The significant fact here is that Lucy Letby did not work on the 12th of June, nor would she see the baby up until the 13th of June. For some reason, Dr. Evans would shift the allegation of deliberate harm to the 13th of June, which coincides exactly with Lucy Letby's shift pattern. Reading through more of the transcript from day 20, Ben Meyer's defense lawyer says to Dr. Evans, quote, "I just want to deal with what you have said in, is it 8 reports that you prepared in the case of baby C plus 1 joint report? That's correct, isn't it?" Dr. Evans responds, "I think so, yes." Ben Myers then says yes, and again, just to make it quite clear, in not one of them before today have you suggested that splinting of the diaphragm on 13th of June was a cause of death. Dr. Evans responds, "That is correct." Something worth bearing in mind here, and also when you think of the shift chart presented at the trial, which apparently correlated Lucy Letby's presence exactly with suspicious incidents. Outside the trial, Dr. Evans has been in some message exchanges and arguments with experts. In one of these exchanges, he attempted to school statistician Peter Elston with a statistical analysis.
And had done his own statistical analysis, and he needed Lucy Letby's full shift calendar.
Dr. Evans would, in my opinion, let it slip that he had a copy of Lucy Letby's shift chart, as he sent a copy to Mr. Elston to try and win the argument.
Dr. Evans had emailed it to me.
This raises the obvious question, who sent Dr. Evans the shift chart and when? Especially as, on paper, he was supposed to and has publicly claimed to have run an impartial analysis of suspicious incidents. In my opinion, it might be hard to catch Dr. Evans red-handed lying under oath, as in many of the cases he maintains an element of plausible deniability. However, I have not reviewed the whole of the transcript. To my knowledge, a retired NHS consultant did make a simultaneous complaint against both Dr. Evans and Dr. Bohin, whose evidence I will look at later in this video. An allegation was made to Cheshire Constabulary that Dr. Evans and Dr. Bohin had obstructed the course of justice. Cheshire Constabulary declined to investigate at the time. Personally, I have a suspicion that other witnesses at the trial who hadn't completed their evidence noticed Dr. Evans playing fast and loose with the truth. Therefore, a significant amount of responsibility falls with the judge. By failing to strike out the testimony of Dr. Evans, he sent the message that the court was going to take a hands-off approach to anyone potentially lying under oath, thereby allowing the courtroom to potentially descend into a mobbing and a farce. The next individual who has made statements you have to be highly suspicious of under oath is Dr. Stephen Brearey. The most obvious is the following statement, which has become a catchphrase of sorts, as he claims he made the statement in reaction to finding out Lucy Letby's presence was correlated with a number of bad patient outcomes.
Well, I think I can remember saying, "Oh no, it can't be Lucy, not nice Lucy."
So I've been through longer descriptions of the evidence for and against him, ever actually saying this in other videos. The only available evidence I can find is that he did not say this and in fact put Lucy Letby in the frame by manipulating the shift chart to exclude doctors plus other nurses such as Mel Taylor and Elizabeth Marshall. The next shady claim from Dr. Stephen Brearey is a claim that he sent an email to Medical Director Ian Harvey requesting an urgent meeting on the 8th of February 2016. It's not completely clear what was said to the jury about this, as I only have the media reports and not the trial transcript from the day of discussion. However, the existence or not of this email was discussed extensively at the Thirlwell inquiry under oath, and in my opinion, the evidence points away from it actually existing. You can see the headlines that came out of the trial for the day 14th of March 2023, such as, quote, "Hospital executive warned 3 times about Lucy Letby, court is told," close quote. To avoid confusion, 14th of March 2023 is the day of the trial. Dr. Brearey would make the claim under oath that he sent the email to Ian Harvey. 8th February 2016 is the day the email was supposedly sent. The Daily Telegraph article talks about 3 occasions where Dr. Brearey would claim he tried to raise concerns with executives. I'm going to focus on the substance of one of these claims. Reading through this answer from Dr. Brearey under oath at the Thirlwell inquiry, quote, "We had the thematic review the week beforehand in February, and I had provided a draft report from that meeting, and I sent that to Ian Harvey, the medical director, with a request for an urgent meeting to discuss." Later on at the Thirlwell inquiry, Dr. Brearey would say after sending this February 8th email, quote, "I was expecting an urgent meeting within a week or 2 with him to discuss the report and to discuss the concerns." So now, when questioned about the email, the lawyer for the hospital managers puts it to Dr. Brearey at the inquiry, quote, I know Dr. Brearey, have searched for the email that you say you sent to Ian Harvey asking for an urgent meeting." Dr. Brearey responds, "Yes." The lawyer for the hospital managers then says, "And you can't find it?" Dr. Brearey says no. The manager's lawyer then says, "Is it possible that you are wrong in your recollection about asking for a meeting with him?" Dr. Brearey then says, "I don't think so, no." An explanation for why the email can't be found is that it never existed in the first place. Now to look at one of the emails that can be found. On February 15th, 2016, a week after Dr. Brearey has claimed he called for an urgent meeting to discuss the rogue killer in his neonatal unit, Ian Harvey says in his email to Dr. Brearey, quote, "I note that you state an obstetric review did not identify any common themes." Dr. Brearey himself had said to Ian Harvey in an earlier email that day on the 15th, quote, "We did have a review of all the cases from 2015 to identify any themes or common learning." In his response later in the day, he does not contradict Mr. Harvey's claim that there were no common themes. I think if you had raised concerns about a potential rogue killer on the neonatal unit, then at this point you would explode at not being listened to. The most likely explanation, in my opinion, is that the February 8th email didn't exist and is part of a revisionist narrative. The most serious allegation against Dr. Brearey at present is that he didn't disclose to the coroner and therefore the pathologist who carried out Baby O's post-mortem that he had blindly inserted a needle during a resuscitation attempt. Under oath, he stated the needle he inserted was, quote, "nowhere near," close quote, the baby's liver, which was shown to be severely damaged. Another witness at the trial, against whom the perjury question has been raised, is Dr. Anna Milan, a biochemist at Liverpool Clinical Laboratories. Dr. Milan was a witness to fact at the trial and not an expert witness asked to offer a subjective opinion. Looking at some of her trial testimony on screen from the transcript, day 73, 20th of February 2023, quote, "There is only one outcome for that pattern, and that is exogenous insulin," close quote. Exogenous insulin as in insulin produced outside the body. So now on screen, you can see a segment of a printout from Liverpool Clinical Laboratories. Highlighted in yellow, it suggests 2 options in the event of a result which involves low C-peptide and raised insulin. The options are either insulin administration or insulin receptor antibodies. So Dr Milan's claim that somebody poisoning the babies with insulin is the only explanation is false, and she should have known it was false at the time she gave testimony. The next individual suspected of perjury is Dr Bohin. As I understand it, Dr Bohin's testimony provoked shock amongst doctors and scientists observing the trial. For instance, this is how retired paediatric consultant Dr Roger Norwich described his reaction to Dr Bohin's testimony.
I, as with many doctors who've seen evidence, and particularly the testimonies given by Drs Bohin, I and they were absolutely astounded by some of the responses.
Professor of Neonatal Medicine Nina Modi has also publicly described surprise at the logic of the prosecution.
This was so obvious as to have us falling off our chairs.
I have heard that Dr Bohin's testimony at the trial has been a subject of a criminal complaint which Cheshire Constabulary have so far declined to investigate. I think the chops and changes in her testimony are more subtle than those by Dr Evans. Furthermore, there's an allegation that she repeatedly played dumb over basic medical facts. I'm not going to go into the details of her testimony as I think it would take too long. The next individual whose integrity has been questioned is an anonymous female consultant who went by the alias Dr B at the trial and Dr V at the Thirlwell inquiry. She is mainly currently coming under fire, as when she reported the death of baby O to the coroner, she withheld details of a needle insertion by Dr Brearey. This meant that the pathologist who carried out the post-mortem was not aware of the details and timing of this needle insertion. A statement by Dr B that's disputed is that she claimed at the trial that Lucy Letby said to her, quote, "He's not getting out of here alive," close quote, in reference to one of the babies. This formed the basis for several headlines, but personally I have doubts that it was ever stated. If you look at the ward manager Arian Powell's testimony from the Thirlwell inquiry counsel put it to her, quote, "Dr V has told us that she also let you know that Letby made the remark to her that baby P wasn't going to get out alive. Do you remember her telling you that?" Arian Powell responds, "I remember her saying that she did an inappropriate comment. She never said what it was, and I asked her, like what? And she said, well, I can't think now, I can't remember what it was." So I think it's a bit suspect that she couldn't remember the inappropriate comment just after, then 7 years later it becomes a dramatic moment at trial. I think it's worth bearing in mind that the allegation that this comment was made came towards the end of the trial, once a certain amount of momentum had built against Lucy Letby. I know some people who think Lucy Letby is innocent, who think this comment was made out of frustration at the poor care that was being offered on the unit, but personally, I think the most likely explanation is that this comment was in fact a fabrication. There is another anonymous female consultant who went by the aliases Dr ZA at the Thirlwell inquiry and Dr C at the trial. I think it may turn out that she made shady statements about her decision for there not to be a post-mortem over baby E. Dr A is an anonymous male consultant who is suspected of making immodest comments under oath about his failure to insert a breathing tube into baby N. The final noteworthy individual who I'm going to discuss here, although I wouldn't be shocked if something came out about another witness, is Dr Ravi Jayaram. I've done another longer video where I've looked at the basis for a perjury investigation into Ravi Jayaram, so I'm not going to go over it in too much detail here. I think almost everyone has heard some of his claims about Lucy Letby dislodging a breathing tube. But if you go by this article, Hidden Email Cast Doubt on Lucy Letby Verdict, you can see he gave a different version of events in his first account of the incident, saying, quote, "Staff nurse Letby was at incubator and called Dr Jayaram to inform of low saturations," close quote. So in conclusion, in my opinion, there are grounds for a large-scale investigation into the trial of Lucy Letby. There are credible grounds to investigate certain individuals for perjury, and in some cases certain individuals such as Dr V and Dr Brearey may have conspired to pervert the course of justice. I do not believe that Cheshire Constabulary are up to the task, and instead the task should be handed over to another police force.